Welcome back to my channel, guys. My name is Raggy Rog, and today I am bringing you a tier list in which I am going to be rating my favorite normal rodent Pokemon. So I've done a couple of videos like this before where I rated like all of the early bird Pokemon from the series, and a similar archetype in the Pokemon franchise is that there's always a rodent-like normal type Pokemon, typically that you can catch early in the game, so Route 1, 2, 3, whatever. Very early in the game you can usually find one of these Pokemon. And the idea is that they typically only evolve one time, and they are infamous for just not being that great, but they can fill a niche. Like, there's a million things to say, but the thing about them is that they are always loved. Like, for whatever reason, they might become a meme, or they just might be cute. And regardless of what you think of them, like, competitively or whatever, it doesn't change the fact that their designs are cool, and they become, like, an integral part of their game. I remember when Gen 4 came out, no one would stop talking about Bidoof. So, you know. Anyways, getting into it, we're just going to rate them today from S through to D for any reason, in the order that we see them. Let's just get on with it. So, the OG normal rodent Pokemon is Rattata, and Rattata... I'm actually gonna... I know a lot of people love Rattata. Like, unironically, a lot of people say that Rattata is their favorite Pokemon. And I'm sorry, I gotta put him down in C. Like, this has actually happened on my channel before, but there is an infamous move pool that you can give to a level 1 Rattata, where you give it a Focus Sash, you give it Quick Attack, and then you give it the move Endeavor, I believe, so it can survive a single hit, reduce the opponent's health down to whatever the difference is between their health and the opponent's. Typically that means their health will go down to 1, and then it can clean them up with Quick Attack. And you can find a million videos here on YouTube of people like winning entire battles just by spamming this stupid routine with Rattata. And like, you can do it with a bunch of Pokemon, but Rattata is like the original one that this was known for. It's called the Fear Cycle, and it's so stupid, it makes me kind of hate Rattata. Then we have Raticate, and I'm gonna actually rate Raticate like exactly the same as Rattata. Like, he's the obvious progression from Rattata, but he's actually less interesting, and maybe that's just because he changes his color to brown, so he's more like an actual rat color. But like, otherwise he's not very interesting. Then we have Sentret, and I don't dislike Sentret, but I gotta put Sentret into B section, because Sentret, to me, while I remember when Gen 2 first came out, and I was super excited about every Pokemon. And the first time I ever saw Sentret, I was excited, but I had also at this time seen Pokemon like Chikorita, Hoot Hoot, I had seen Leddyba, I had seen a bunch of new Pokemon that were very interesting, and in terms of how well they held my attention, Sentret didn't really do that job at all. So you know, no offense, Sentret, but you're not interesting to me. In regards to Furret, I will rate him exactly the same. I was so uninterested in Sentret that I didn't realize this guy had an evolution until like Gen 3 or 4. I wasn't paying that closer attention, but he is the evolved form of Sentret, and he looks so different from Sentret that like I didn't even make the connection that they were kind of the same Pokemon. Then we have Zigzagoon, and I am actually going to put Zigzagoon up into A section. Zigzagoon, he's just my boy. I like Zigzagoon, and he's got Pickup. My last playthrough of Omega Ruby, I definitely used one. His Pickup ability was incredibly helpful. Zigzagoon. If you don't like Zigzagoon, I could understand why, because he's so plain looking. But there's just enough about this Pokemon, to me, that makes him worth hanging around. On that note, if you are like me, then you love Linoone, and that is actually the sole reason why I got Zigzagoon in my last playthrough of Omega Ruby, is because I know he turns into Linoone, and Linoone is one of my favorite Pokemon. Yes, aesthetically he's kind of not that interesting. He's kind of similar looking to Furret, and I can't really explain why. It's probably from like when I was playing Pokemon Ranch, and I had a Linoone in there, and it did like a close-up on Linoone, and I got to watch him run around like a straight line. It was so fast, it was so cool, and it's a really weird reason why I like Linoone. But he's been my boy ever since. I had him with me in Omega Ruby, and he was kind of my HM slave, which is weird because he does that well. He can use Strength, which is a stab move for him. He can use Surf, which is just a really powerful move. And I'm pretty sure he can use Shadow Ball and Thunderbolt, correct me if I'm wrong. But he's like really useful just to have with you through the game, so I love him. Then we have Bidoof, and I'm sorry, I'm going to put Bidoof down into C section. I know a lot of people just rave about Bidoof, but if you've been following my channel for a while, then you will already know that I begrudge a Pokemon that is loved for being stupid. And at its core, Bidoof is just kind of stupid and dumb, and that's why people like it. I don't see the hype. I don't get it. He's just a stupid little beaver Pokemon, and I know that for all the reasons I just said I like Lanoon, as he's like the ultimate HM slave, a lot of people will say that Bidoof is that as well. But aesthetically, Bidoof also is stupid looking, and Lanoon is a badass, so there you go. For the exact same reason, I'm actually going to put Bibarel in the exact same section as Bidoof. I appreciate that he is like a clear evolution, but I also remember that when playing through Gen 4, you have to wade through so many trainers using Bibarel, and it's not fun. Like, he's not hard, he's just not interesting to encounter, I'll say that. Then we have Patrat, and I actually hate Patrat. Of all of them, Patrat might actually be the least interesting to me, and there's not much else to say about that. Like, anything that I can say about Patrat, I can say about Watchog, who is going to also go down into D. I believe they were introduced in Gen 5, so Black and White, and that makes sense because Gen 5 might have the most uninteresting Pokemon to me overall, possibly? It's hard to say, but in terms of Patrat and Watchog, they are just not that interesting. I think because also they tried to do like a focus on them using moves like Confuse Ray and moves like that, I begrudge them a lot, because having to deal with that in the main playthrough of any game is a pain in the ass, so I begrudge them for that, for sure. Then we have Bunnelby, and I gotta give Bunnelby like a perfect B rating. He is very interesting in terms of like early rodent Pokemon. I believe he is not just a normal type Pokemon, he is a normal ground type, or if he isn't normal ground, Diggersby will be, but for Bunnelby, he is the first rabbit in this list, which makes him automatically unique. I never used one. I think I used him for like 5 minutes, and then I found like better Pokemon. But, you know, he's alright. Then we have Diggersby. And Diggersby, I'm going to also put in B section. Like, Diggersby, he is definitely a ground-type Pokemon, which makes him perfectly unique from the rest. His design is, I get he's meant to be, like, covered in dirt. It occurs to me now by looking at him, he might be, like, a reference to the Easter Bunny, because he's clearly meant to be, like, covered in dirt and mud, because he, like, digs underground. But it also kind of looks like chocolate all over his face, so, like, I don't know. If you know more about Diggersby, if you know for a fact that he is in fact a reference to the Easter Bunny, let me know. Then we have Yungoos, and I'm actually going to put Yungoos down into D section as well, kind of for the same reasons as Patrat and Watchog. He is not very interesting to me. I'm actually playing through Sun and Moon right now, just replaying it for nostalgia's sake, I guess, and it's like, he's not interesting. Like, there's nothing about this Pokemon that makes me want to use him, and I don't believe he's even viable competitively, or his evolved form. On that note, we have Gumshoes, who is the evolved form, and I'm gonna put him in C. He is more interesting. I remember that there were actually a bunch of memes that pointed out that he looks very, very similar to Donald Trump, which I think is funny, and I'm pretty sure that was a massive accident. I don't get what this Pokemon's gimmick is supposed to be. Like, he's still very uninteresting to me, but if I had to use him, I guess I could. I wouldn't like it, but yeah. Then we have Squavit. Squavit. I'm gonna call him Squavit. And I love it. Sorry for the bad joke there, but Squavit, he is the first early route rodent normal Pokemon that is actually based directly on a squirrel, and I think that's absolutely the coolest thing. I actually love squirrels as an Australian, recently moved to Canada. Squirrels are kind of a big deal to me because we don't really have them there, so I just like squirrels. So there's a squirrel that recently moved in to the tree just outside of my house, and I love it. We call him the 9 to 5 squirrel because he leaves the house at 9 in the morning, and he comes back at 5 in the afternoon. We see him go across the power lines. It's great. He's Mr. 9 to 5 squirrel. It works. I love him. If only for that reason, I really like Squavit. Greedent? I'm gonna put Greedent down in B section. Like, I like him more than a few of these guys. So definitely he's better than Bibarel, but I think I prefer Squavit just because he's so cute, and he does remind me of Mr. 9 to 5. Mr. 9 to 5 clearly hits the gym because he's not a big fat boy like Greedent. And it's not to say I just like Greedent, it's just like I don't have any strong feelings about him. So there you go. Now we're getting into some really interesting territory here, and we have Alolan Rattata. And Alolan Rattata, I'm actually going to rate like the exact same as regular old Rattata. It's like, I still begrudge it, but it is interesting that he got a Alolan form. He got a regional variant, which is something that this line needed to stay relevant, I guess. And that is an unfortunate reality of the Pokemon franchise, and is why I think regional variants are so important, is because as we get more and more Pokemon, it's going to become harder and harder to keep certain Pokemon relevant, especially when certain gens now are just going to be completely excluding some. So to give them a regional variant is a way to keep them interesting. But unfortunately for Rattata, it didn't give him enough to make him still worth using in my book. I know a lot of people probably did. He gained Dark typing, which was, I would call, a cool, interesting introduction to the concept of regional variants. So there you go. Then we have Alolan Raticate, and I'm going to put Alolan Raticate up into B section because, similar to like Greedent or Diggersby, I don't actually have anything against this guy, and unlike regular old Raticate, he does look like a Pokemon, whereas like traditional Raticate, he just looks too similar to a regular old rat. The black coloring and the big puffy cheeks make him interesting enough, make him more like a Pokemon, so I appreciate that about him. I'm probably still never going to use him, but there you go. Now this one should be interesting. We have Galarian Zigzagoon, and for Galarian Zigzagoon, weirdly, I'm not as crazy about him as I am with traditional Zigzagoon. Like, I appreciate the classics, I guess. I don't have a lot of drive to use Galarian Zigzagoon, so that's a thing. In regards to Galarian Linoone, I have to put him up in S section with his counterpart, regular Linoone, because they are the same Pokemon. It's weird because I rated Zigzagoon lower, but I'm rating Linoone the same. And this harkens back to how I said that, like, regional variants are a way to give old Pokemon new love in a ever competitively growing environment, because I have no doubt now that there are some Pokemon out there who are literally no one's favorite. And out of some, like, nearly 1,000, maybe literally 1,000 Pokemon now, it's kind of believable. And in the case of Linoone, like, I don't doubt that there are plenty of people who say that Linoone is their absolute favorite Pokemon. But when was the last time you saw anyone use the Linoone competitively? When was the last time you heard about it in the meta? Ever. Galarian Linoone has given him a new lease, so there you go. Then we have what no one was expecting, not a Galarian variant, but just a brand new evolution for Linoone, and that is Obstagoon. And Obstagoon is just another way to give a lot of love to an already existing Pokemon. Linoone now has an evolution, so that's something we can get excited about. I've talked about Obstagoon on the channel before, and how he's a direct reference to Gene Simmons, and he's got a really cool, bold design. I'm going to rate him an A, because overall, I still just prefer classic Linoone. And while I love Obstagoon, I love what Obstagoon has done for Linoone and his line, I don't love him more than Linoone. So there you go. Anyways, these have been my ratings for all of the early route normal type rodent Pokemon. So there you go. I realize that probably half of this video was just me raving about how much I love Linoone, and if you can relate, then definitely comment down below. In any case, if you enjoyed the video today, then make sure to give it a like and subscribe and hit the bell and share it with your friends and do all of that good stuff, my guys. In any case, Ragamuffins, my name is Raggy Rog, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one!